So for today's installment of the Gauntlet of Garbage, I saw this film, you did not.
Nope.
I'm very upset that you did not see this, because I kind of need someone else here to remind me of what the hell happened in this movie. But I needed someone to remind me of what was happening in this movie when I was watching the movie. I literally had to rewind the video multiple times so that I could go, okay, seriously, what just happened?
Oh yeah, that's right. You saw this on Netflix, right?
Not on Netflix, but on Amazon. Yeah.
Yes.
So I had to rewind this thing constantly just so you go, I'm sorry, what just happened? Like this thing, I don't even think it's a 2-hour runtime, but it definitely took me over 2 hours to watch this thing. We're talking about The Kitchen, which I think is unquestionably the worst comic book movie of the year. No, wait, Hellboy and Dark Phoenix came out this year. Well, it's one of the worst comic book movies of the year. But people don't think of this as a comic book movie because, you know, it doesn't star superheroes, but this was actually based on a Vertigo series. And I remember picking up the first issue of this Vertigo series when it came out, and I hadn't heard anything about it. It was just a new thing. I was like, oh, you know, this'll be something new. This will be something different from what I normally read. And oh my god, I just found it to be so lifeless and so uninteresting. So when I found out it was getting turned into a movie, I went, why? What? I'm sorry. And it's not like it sold well and audiences were mostly kind of like, to the book. But I did look it up before we did this review just to double check this, and apparently critics actually did like it. I did get good critical praise, so I can understand it being one of those things that kind of got shuffled around Hollywood, like, oh, people are talking about this thing, even though not everybody was really talking about it. But yeah, it was an odd thing to get turned into a movie, but the idea of it is that in like the 1970s-ish, I want to say, it's not really that important because I wasn't really paying much attention. Around the 1970s-ish, there are these 3 housewives whose husbands all work for the mob, and they all end up getting arrested, so they're all like, well, what are we going to do for money? Well, what if we start running things around here? So they start running the mob, and that's why it's called The Kitchen. It's them running the Hell's Kitchen side of the mob. Mm-hmm. Which this could really have used Daredevil to come in at some point in time to spice things up. But yeah, that is the basic premise of this thing, and this might be the shortest review that we have ever done for the Gauntlet of Garbage, because this entire film, from its story to how it's shot, is so incomprehensible that, like I said, I constantly had to stop and rewind and go, did I black out? What happened here? Which, the film is pretty boring, so I did have to actually question it. It was like, okay, I clearly am just not paying attention.
It's like, I must have fallen asleep. Boring.
I may have fallen asleep at some point.
Then you rewind and it's like, nope, they just smash cut to this part.
Kind of, yes. Because, like I said, it's these 3 women, they rise up, they take over the mob side of Hell's Kitchen. The Hell's Kitchen side of the mob, I should say. And what happens is that after their husbands go away, they go to this meeting, which it feels like a lodge club meeting, but it's like a meeting of all the mob boss guys. And they go, okay, well, why don't we do this? And a guy basically just goes, you get the hell out of here. We don't need to hear anything from you. Not at all. Get the hell out of my sight. And they get out of there. And then they go to someone, ask him for some money. They give him some money. Then they go to another person, and they say, hey, we know that you're trying to do this thing. We can give you the money to help you do this thing. And now they're running the mob.
Wow, was it that easy?
I guess. Wow, it is easier to run the mob than it is to run a YouTube channel. Yeah, it like just happened. Like it then cuts to like the montage sequence, you know, like music playing of them just strutting around like, yeah, we run this thing. Like, what the hell did you do even? What? When I saw Uncut Gems, I love that film, but there were many things in there that I didn't fully understand because I don't really follow betting. Like, I don't know much about betting, so when they're using all the terminology in there, I was kind of like, well, I don't quite understand this, but they're framing it in a way that makes me understand things are happening in here. I've seen enough mob movies to know, okay, well, you kind of do this thing and this thing and this thing, and I might not know all the little details in there, but I kind of know what it looks like when someone rises to power in the mob, and I'm just looking at this going, I don't know what the hell any of you... What the hell did you just do? How are you running the mob now? But they just are. And these people are some of the worst criminals I have ever... Like, they're just leaving evidence everywhere. There's moments where they dump evidence off in front of someone's shop, and it's just sitting there. And again, okay, this is a perfect example of what I mean of this film. It does not show you how things are accomplished, and it is so lazy with how they actually carry out any of the crimes. They go up to some guy. They need someone to be kind of their enforcer. So they get this guy. He's the guy who chopped people up for the mob, and they recruit him to their side. And he kind of just joins their side just because he wants to. Like, he does have the hots for one of them, and she has the hots for him. So maybe that's why he just decided to jump ship, but he just basically jumped ship instantly and just like, yeah, sure, I'll be on your side. But he was like the nut job of the mob because he's the one who chops up the bodies and everything. And there's actually one kind of a good scene in here in which they're showing, in which he is trying to teach them how to dispose of bodies, and he's going, all right, you gotta cut into this spot and make sure that you puncture both lungs because those contain air. So if you dump them into the lake, then they'll float back up. So you gotta punch her like that. It's like, okay, well, it's kind of an interesting scene because they're looking at like you can tell they have never seen this part of their husband's job. So it's like, okay, that's not bad. That's okay-ish. But after they hire him, it then cuts to him chasing someone down, and he shoots the guy in broad daylight, but he pulls the gun out, and he doesn't, like, do, like, a badass pose or anything like that, but he also doesn't do, like, any kind of, I'm a professional and I've done this many times, proper stance or anything. He takes out, and he's literally flailing his arm around, like, he literally takes out and goes, no, and like that, and fires it. And shoots the guy. And I was like, you can't hold a gun noodle arms. Holding the gun the way that he did when he shot, he would have snapped his wrist off. And he fires it, kills the guy.
The
recoil, yeah.
recoil.
He fires it, and he does this in broad daylight on the street. Tons of people around watching this happen, and then he just walks away with the dead body just right there in front of everyone. And then one of the mob bosses, one of the three women who become mob bosses, she just walks up to two women who just happen to be standing there, and she goes, you walk the street. You work for us now. Follow me. Were they prostitutes? Like, it didn't even, it seemed like it was a command. It didn't seem like she was asking them, like, so, I think it's supposed to be implied that guy was like a pimp or something that they shot, and these were the prostitutes working for him. So now that he's dead, they've recruited him. But literally what it is we see this guy go up to some random guy that we don't know, shoot him down in broad daylight on the street, then two random women who just happen to be standing there, one of our protagonists goes up to them and just goes, you walk the street, you work for us, follow me. It feels like she just went up to two people who just watched a murder and just went, because you have seen this murder, you're now prostitutes. And you have to work for us. There is no saying that. Like, that's how it's framed. It is so insane.
Like, you just witnessed a crime. We can't have any witnesses out. You're
so
one
now
of us
you're
now.
prostitutes. What? Like, that's how many of the scenes in here are framed. And a lot of the story just isn't thought out at all. And not just even the stuff of like how often they just leave evidence around. Like I said, they just shot this guy in broad daylight. But there's even worse things. There are so many worse moments than that. Like there's this guy, he runs, oh God, I can't remember what he runs. But he's, there's this Jewish guy who they're trying to like get in on his business, but he doesn't want to sign on with them. So they back a dump truck up to his shop, and then they open it up and body parts just pile out, just like fall out right there in front of his store. Like chopped up body parts just fall out on front of his store. And that's the thing that's supposed to convince him.
Are there like no police in
That's
this
exactly
world?
my thought. I was like, oh my God, okay. I know that a lot of like the movie magic that goes into police work, like, you know, fingerprints and stuff like that, it doesn't actually work in the real world. But oh my God, you dumped just a giant bucket of body parts out on someone's doorstep? That's evidence. That's evidence that anybody could track down. Anybody could track you down on that. And then like a couple minutes later, they talk about how they had to kill like this other Jewish guy. And it shows just a smash cut to just his dead body just shot there on his doorstep. I was like, so you didn't even dispose of the body? Like nothing at all. They are leaving bodies all over the city. the cops have to be able to get on this. The cops would have to be able to figure this out. And there are cops, and every now and again, it cuts to the cops. And basically all it does when they cut to the cops is, it's just them sitting around, and someone comes over the phone and is like, hey, another thing happened. Drops it on their desk. End of the scene with the cops. Back to them. Okay. I mean, there's like a stakeout scene with the cops that feels like it takes days.
The cops their job is to just sit around and do nothing.
They do nothing in this entire film until the very end.
The stakeout is just them like having like a lawn chairs out
stakeout,
and
yeah.
and just sharing a couple of donuts and just watching the mafia get away with murder, literally. Like,
it's so. Everything in here just feels like they did not think a single thing out in this movie. For example, remember that guy who I said they went to at the beginning of this, asking like, well, why don't you try doing this? I don't need you telling me how to do my business. Get out here. And then they just start running the mob. That guy then decides he wants revenge on them, and they're stunned to find out that he might want revenge on them. What? You didn't think about that? I'm so, like, you can't even open a fast food restaurant across the street from another fast food restaurant without them wanting revenge on you. We've all seen McDonald's and Burger King start shit with each other on their signs across the street from each other. And these people just decide, well, we'll just form our own mafia here. I'm sorry, you think there won't be repercussions from just, oh, we're just gonna start our own mafia? You know, I'm sure nothing will come from that, even though we just talked to the guy who is very clearly pissed at us, who is running the current mafia. What? Oh my God. Yeah, it is stunning. It is stunning how poorly formed this story is. Like, how poor they thought every single bit of this story out.
Did they even think any of it out?
Oh, I don't fucking know what they did behind the scenes, but it doesn't feel like it. I literally just said that. Yeah, it does not feel like they thought anything out in this movie. And there's so many scenes where it just goes to a thing happening because it is now happening. And I had to just constantly keep rewinding the thing. And this is from a first-time director, which a lot of these problems you could blame on the story. But none of this is really portrayed well, and that kind of comes down to the director, which it's their very first film, and you can tell because I have never said this in my entire life. This film has really bad blocking. I have never criticized that in a movie.
Blocking?
Yeah, which, you know what that means. That means where the actors stand. There are so many times in which they will have someone saying something or doing something, and everybody else is just like, I guess I'll just stand here. Like, there's moments in which they kind of like have someone doing something right here, and then the person next to them is just like, so should I be? I guess I'm just here now. Okay. Well, there's so many moments like that. And I actually had to look up a couple of other people's reviews on this film because I've had nothing to say about this movie. I had nothing to say at all. It's a film that really feels like nothing is happening, even though this is an interesting story. This is a very interesting story, but it feels like nothing is happening in this film because they cannot tell this story. So I had to look up some other people's reviews, and I saw some other critics bring up some very interesting things in here. Like I saw Chris Stuckman did a review on this, and he mentioned something that I didn't even think about. One of the reasons why it feels so boring is because nobody feels real, and I thought a lot of that came down to the blocking, just the fact that the actors were just standing around largely, just not really doing anything. But he also brought up, nobody ever talks over anyone. Nobody ever really has like a back and forth conversation. I mean, even when people are talking back and forth with each other.
Like it feels like they're just reading off their lines.
I read my line. Now you read your line. You have finished your line. I now read my line. And because of that, people feel lifeless in this.
Yeah.
Like, this feels amateur hour. The entire film feels so amateurish. Like, it really does feel like this was made by somebody who it was their first film.
Like just someone filling a middle school play or something.
It's not quite that bad. But it's really the only reason it's not that bad is because you do have big name actors in here. People with reputations. People who know how to act.
They know how to act, they're just given bad directions.
Yeah, I never thought I would say this, but Melissa McCarthy saved this goddamn movie. Because she at least knows how to act. Like, I have never seen a film in which I actually had to stop and go, would someone please let Melissa McCarthy improv? Please let Melissa McCarthy improv in this film. I know that's typically the worst part of a Melissa McCarthy film, but I will take anybody giving personality to these lines right now. I will take anybody just talking like a person would talk in this film right now. It is stunning how lifeless everything feels in here. It's lifeless performances, lifeless acting, all being put against a story that is so chopped up and not even thought out that it just feels incomprehensible. Like, here's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. And this comes down to the camera work in this one. God, I cannot remember her name, but one of the protagonists, she was married to the guy whose mom was running like this one section of the mob, and the mom is constantly just shit talking her the entire time. And there's this one evening where she takes her mother-in-law out to a very nice celebration. I think it was for her birthday or something. And so she takes her out to a restaurant, and it's just a long sequence of just people walking, of just these two characters walking down the street, just taking their time, delivering these lines back and forth at each other. So, and they're lines of them like shit talking to each other, but it never felt real because there wasn't really any passion or anything behind any of it. And then they just eventually get to the location of the restaurant, and then she goes, "Where is everybody?" Shove. Just pushes her down. And then after she falls down, the camera then cuts to her and just goes, "It's closed on Mondays, asshole." Like, that's the amount of passion that is delivered into that line. And I looked at that and went, okay, so you're trying to like assert dominance and maybe like you broke her hip or something. No, she died. She died from falling down one step. And I know she's old, but even old people aren't gonna die from one step. Literally, she gets shoved down, and like, maybe it was a big set of stairs, but the way it's shot, it looks like it's just like one little stoop. Just you drop down one step, that's it. She pushed her down that, and she died from that. And again, the way the camera filmed this moment, I was like, it looked like she was still there on the ground, like, oh, my side. I've fallen and I can't get up. Like,
Yeah.
it looked like that. But no, she died from that.
I've died
Okay.
and I can't get up.
Like, I can't even really be mad at that because it's so nothing in that moment that it just makes you sit there and just go, so did anybody try? Like, I can't be mad at this because there's nothing to be mad at, but that's why I'm mad. There's nothing here. Like,
You didn't try at all.
it's like, how on earth did you like look at that in the dailies and think that that was okay? It's, again, I don't really have a lot else to say about this. I know this is going to be the most boring of our Gauntlet of Garbage episodes, but this is a film where I can't come in here and go, and why is anyone doing this? And why did they decide to do that? Because it's like, it just happens. Stuff in this movie just happens. You die from falling down a step. You take over the mob by handing money to someone at some point in time. A lot of this movie is just telling and not showing, but a lot of times it does show, but what it shows doesn't make sense for what they're telling you, so you kind of have to just shrug and go, I guess that's what happened in that moment. Like a great example, is the thing that I just forgot. No, I just remembered it. Okay. There are moments in here in which they talk about the good that they're doing for the community, and how the community loves them, and what good they're doing, and how they're helping so many people out. I didn't see any of that.
Like, the way
I didn't see any of that in this film.
the way you describe this movie, it feels like there's no conflict at all.
Well, at the end of it, there is, like...
Are we going to spoiler territory?
Well, I don't give a shit about that. No one gives a shit about that in this. But towards the end of this, like I said, the original mob guy who didn't want to work with him, they come back, and then the husbands come back around. They get released from prison, and now they come back and they're like, what were you doing? What were you doing running the mob right now? And some of them are okay with it, some of them aren't. So there are conflicts in here. But I mean, a lot of the conflict is also supposed to be, are the cops closing in on them? But like I said,
What cops?
But like I said, what cops? A lot of the cops in here are just, check out this new file, toss on desk. That's it. That's the end of the cop scene right now. But yeah, like I said, a lot of this film, it isn't talking about what good they're doing in the community. I was like, I haven't seen you do anything in this community. I haven't seen you do anything at all. A lot of this is you guys strutting down the street, talking about what badasses you are, talking about what you've done for the community. I haven't seen any of that. The only real scene that I see in here, like there's only one that I can remember, one moment that I can remember of them actually doing something, is they go up to this one guy, hand him some cash, and go, yeah, you put that to good use. Pause. Make sure you pay us back. Walk away. I don't know who that guy was. I don't know what he's doing with that money. I mean, he needed it for his business to keep it running, but what's really the point of that business staying around? Like, do people love that shop? Do you have a connection in that shop? What does that character end up doing later in the film? We don't know any of that. And that's it. That is the one and only time that we actually see what they really do in terms of business. The rest of this is them like standing around going like, yeah, walking down the street. All right, we just did that.
Or shooting people.
Or shooting people. Yeah, it's like, all right, you work for us now. How do I know you're not a worse pimp than that guy was? I don't know any of this stuff. Yeah, you never see any of the things that they say that they're accomplishing in this film. A lot of this film is these characters patting themselves on the back for things that you do not get to see in this movie. And when you do see it, it's shot in a way that you just don't really even understand what you saw. And I don't even mean shot in a way like the moment where the lady falls down the step. I also just mean shot in a way of edited. Like the way that it is put together in the rest of this film, in which you're like, I don't know what that has to do with this thing. How did this end up getting us to this? All right, fine. This is really one of the most amateurish films I've seen. It's not the worst film I've seen all year. I've seen definitely far worse films. Some that are even more amateurish than this. See our review of The Haunting of Sharon Tate. But there are other films that are going to be on my worst of the year list, like Hellboy. Hellboy, I think, was terrible. And Hellboy is going to be lower on my worst of the year list than this one was, just because it does a lot of things really bad. But you can at least look at that one and go, well, the people making this know what a movie is. The people who making this know what a story structure is. I can't really say that about The Kitchen. Yeah, this is, man, the only reason I'm not really more upset with this is because there isn't really anything to be upset about. Like, you can't get mad at something you don't understand. But this is a simple-ass story. How did you screw it up so bad? How did you make it so I can't understand it? But yeah, there you go. Like I said, this was probably our most relaxed episode of the Gauntlet of Garbage, because this is such an incompetent film.
And you were the only one who saw it, so I can't really say much about it.
But it's so incompetent that I can't get mad at it. Yeah, it's kind of like when someone... It's kind of like if someone turns in a term paper, and the term paper just has the worst handwriting you've ever seen. So you look at it and you're like, I don't even know what this sentence is in here. I don't even know what this is. How am I even supposed to grade this thing? And it could be great what they wrote down. It could be terrible what they wrote down. But it doesn't make any sense because you cannot determine what they wrote down. But yeah, so that's it. That's the best way that I can sum this up. It's just the embodiment of bad handwriting.
For once, you didn't use a food metaphor.
Yeah. But that's it. I know this was like the least interesting one that we've done, but goddamn, I'm trying to find something to say, but I can't. So come back tomorrow for the question of the best, and then come back the day after that, in which we will be talking about, we'll be talking about way worse film than this one. And we do have some things to say about that one. Come back then, everyone. Bye.
Bye.